Ryan.
Today, we are learning basketball with Zach Welch, a basketball scout and analyst with Pro Insight. Super excited to dive into the 2024 NBPA Top 100 Camp, where we got to meet and check out a ton of the top high school prospects around the country, all going at it almost in like an all star context to see who separates their games in a different type of atmosphere, but still a lot of fun to see all that talent going at it, see who stands out, and kind of can't wait to hit on your scouting process and your film watching process and kind of your background in general of how you became a scout with Pro Insight. But first, how you doing today, Zach?
I'm doing great. I appreciate you having me on here. Glad we got to make this happen. NBPA was a really fun time. There's a lot of fun talent there, and looking forward to digging into everything.
No doubt. And before we jump into the camp and maybe hit on one rising prospect in the college ranks, I would like to know kind of how you got into the scouting world and ended up with Pro Insight so far and kind of your journey towards scouting with them.
Yeah. So I first got into scouting. I grew up in Massachusetts. I was in middle school when the Celtics traded Pearson Garnett for a whole bunch of draft picks. And all of a sudden, that was the main thing I had to look forward to as a fan. So I got really into the draft. I started my own draft blog in like 7th or 8th grade. Just got really into it. And I realized in high school, this could be a career path potentially. And so I kind of probably starting my senior year of high school, every step I've taken since then, I've tried to be very deliberate about working towards getting to work in basketball and scouting and player evaluation long term. I've been fortunate enough to have some great stops along the way. I was a student manager with the Cornell men's basketball team. I was a basketball operations intern with Pro Mondo Sports, an agency. And I've had some great opportunities elsewhere as well. And when I graduated undergrad in 2023, I kind of looked at where I was with my skill set. I had some experience with video scouting. I had some experience with analytics, operations. But I wanted to bolster that background with grassroots scouting and in-person scouting. And so I got kind of linked up with Pro Insight and kind of got to join on as first off kind of like a Northeast area coverage scout and analyst, covering a lot of the prep schools up here, the colleges last year, and took me to some great stops along the way. And then last spring and summer kind of took me on a more of a national tour that included, some great things, including the NBPA.
No doubt. And sounds like you've wanted to be a scout your whole life. I mean, that's super focused and, cool to kind of know that's what you want to do early on. So you are even able to do kind of some of the actions that you took to put yourself in this position to, put yourself on a great path to succeed and really just get some experience early on in this field that is obviously very meaningful and will only, keep building towards your goals. And you're studying post-grad right now, sports management?
Sir. Yeah, I'm getting my master's in sports management at UMass.
Very nice. How's that going so far?
It's been great. It's a great program. It's been really, a great opportunity to learn more about kind of the industry and the landscape as a whole. And, I'm not going to lie, it's been helpful taking sport law classes with everything going on with the NCAA and all those legal cases, court rulings, new rules popping up, et cetera.
Yeah, it's a murky field with where the NIL deal is at. There was a recent story with Florida State with the head coach being sued for, I want to say, over $1.5 million from all these different agreements with players. And, with just an interesting story because maybe things are verbally agreed upon, but maybe not written down. And, it's kind of a wide open, wild west type of atmosphere with where the game is at in college. So, there's a lot of money being thrown around and promises being made. And it's kind of interesting where all that ends up in terms of the field itself. So in terms of your scouting process, How would you kind of detail what you're looking for a future pro prospect? It can be whether it's watching film, whether it's going in person. I'm sure there's a few slight different things that you look for in those contexts. But what is it that you're trying to find that says, you know what, he does X, Y, and Z. I'm pretty confident he's going to be a pro one day.
Yeah, so I think that, I'm looking across the breadth of skills people can have and skill sets people can have across scoring, shooting, off ball play, playmaking, rebounding, defense, etc. Right? And I think the key things that I'm looking for are what are your elite skills or elite skill sets, and more specifically, how can they lend themselves to being valuable in the playoffs, right? And I think that's where making sure that you're as up to date as possible on the pros as a scout is so important, because you need to know what you're projecting to. And you look at some of the trends in the league, and how it's really hard, for example, to be a small guard that can bring value in the playoffs unless you're a star. Um, Things like that have kind of helped shape my scouting philosophy. And instead of just saying, are you good at something? What are you good at? It's how important is that? And what are your paths to providing value when it matters most with that? Um, I think kind of beyond that, like my actual process, I'd say, some things I like to look for are, dribble, pass, shoot skill set, guys who are absolutely elite defensively, which genuinely means, 98th percentile and above, usually involves great tools and great feel. Guys who are tough, own their space, guys who have had an impressive growth curve. And I think what all that kind of lends itself to is indicators of upside and indicators of scalability too. Because I like when guys have tangible flashes of what they can do long term. And I also like when they show, hey, if I can't be something special, I can be something valuable at least. You mentioned kind of the idea of like in person versus video. I think the big key there is I like to do both. I cover a lot more ground naturally on video just because I'm based out of the Northeast and I can only see so many guys live. But I think the big differentiator is in person, you get a lot more context, right? And that is just the general context of the game for one, but it's also you get there early, you watch them warm up, you talk with coaches, you talk with other scouts. And I think the other kind of underrated aspect is like you get to see them visually, right? And that lends itself to understanding their tools better and understanding their body language and how they're carrying themselves better as well. I think the upside of video is efficiency, right? You get to cover a lot of ground. You get to be more purposeful of saying, I want to see a good game, a bad game, an in-between game, a low major game, a high major game. And I mean, with video too, depending on your process, but for me, I can look and say, oh, this prospect didn't have a good game. Like that's good context going into it. Or maybe, you could go to an in-person game. Like I know some people went to the Rutgers game yesterday and Dylan Harper was sick. And that obviously Ace Bailey had a great performance and it's still valuable. But when it's a team with maybe less talent, it's often more worth your while on video when you know that they're playing at least,
Yeah, some great points on both sides. I mean, pros and cons, like definitely getting to see that body language that you hit on and just kind of, how they are as teammates, how they interact with their team, their coaches, react to positive and negative plays, whether they're lifting guys up or throwing blame around. You're not getting any of that on film, but you might get a little bit more of that in person, especially, in a high school gym where there's only so many people around. You can pretty much hear and see just about everything going on in most of those contexts. But definitely plenty of pros to the film as well. Just like you said, efficiency, just being able to watch good games, bad games, and fly through clips. You can actually break down and detail maybe an action or a play, so you see how they thrive within certain skill sets in certain roles a little more clearly. Like maybe you don't catch that they were running a double drag on the first watch, but you replay it a few times and you're like, oh, it's actually a Spain pick and roll, and he hit the the pick and pop or what have you. But definitely pros and cons. I still love going to a game in person and just kind of getting the feel of all of it. And yeah, it's definitely disappointing when somebody gets hurt or gets sick and is a no show, and you spent all that time just to get there. And obviously their team did too. So definitely some pros and cons there. And yeah, I'm definitely with you on the scouting process in general. Like in its simplest form, being able to defend your own position and be a little switchable, a little versatile to defend a few other positions, defend a few roles, and then bring that two-way versatility to the offensive end, just being able to attack a closeout, shoot the ball, dribble on the drive, look for the kick out pass, some basic skills. But if you're not a superstar at the NBA level, you pretty much have to do all of those things to find a role and contribute to a winning team. So I'm with you on all that. Super great insight is what I was trying to say there on kind of your scouting process and just good scouting philosophy overall. And before we hop into the NBPA draft, where we're going to draft our top 10 scoring creators very soon, I thought we could hit on a rising prospect in the college ranks, Kasparas Jakucionis, who just had an incredible game against Oregon for Illinois. I want to say he only had 2 points a couple minutes into the second half, and then the guy just exploded for 16 points, 6 assists, 6 boards, only 2 turnovers, threw a steal in there. He had a step back to the right for his first bucket, which normally he's going for a left-footed step back. And he showed a lot of scoring versatility, I thought. Like he would draw the switch and pick and roll and attack the big man and kind of get him off balance, throw a few pump fakes and score at the rim. You were mentioning before the pod how he didn't settle for a drive to the rack. He actually stopped for a midi pull-up, and really just a lot of crafty handles and footwork, like Euro stepping through the paint and keeping his dribble alive until he got enough space to get a shot up. And then that incredible vision, like through like one of the craziest passes I've ever seen, really, especially as a prospect, where he's running double drag, the roller's rolling to the rim, and he looks at the popping 3-point line and then fakes it to him with a jump pass and throws like a spinning no look feed to the roller where he just happens to know where he is. He's throwing that effective flair, I like to call it, on a lot of these plays where it's not just for show. Like he's drawing defenders the wrong direction by jumping first, by looking at the other teammate first, by hitting the roller as he rolls. And, even later he drove into the paint in transition and found a trailing 3-point shooter by throwing it between his legs on a bounce pass for a little dump off pass. So, just incredible playmaking vision and kind of really defines this type of scoring creator that we're looking for, especially, in our next topic with the top 100 camp, a little exercise here where we're going to draft the top 10 scoring creators. It's these offensive engine types, like the guys that we think can be the primary decision maker for an offense, who have the ability to score themselves and create for the team, and who will be the most reliable offensive options doing so, where it's no longer just about, who can go get a bucket, but it's about who can also create a good look for their teammate when the bucket isn't there. And Kasparas has shown a lot of that. He's pretty clearly, I don't know, at least a top 5 pick, probably, has earned that top 3 pick status behind Flag and Dylan Harper for, I would say, pretty much consensus at this point. But, Jeremiah Fears has also popped up, and there's a lot of other exciting names in the draft. So, what did you make of that game last night and your thoughts on Kasparas in general?
Yeah, I think he's such a good fit with the topic of scoring creators. I think that's exactly what he is. And I think what's so unique about Kasparas is that oftentimes when you see, these point guards in college who can get their own and also score for others, they're more of, this downhill threat, and it's not a bad thing by any means. And, his rim pressure is certainly an important topic of conversation, but he's such a versatile pull-up shooter. And that is a trait you seldom see from someone who, at his age, is, this elite point guard prospect, right? So I think that the combination of kind of his space creation, his ability to kind of square his shoulders and make it from tough angles as a pull-up shooter, and then, I mean, you mentioned the passing creativity. It's a really lethal combination. He's really crafty. He uses screens well. He has a lot of fakes, good footwork, like you mentioned. I think something that's underrated is he's tough. He's physical. He will go into your chest. I think you kind of saw last night the good and the bad of him, with the bad kind of being his first half, where he, like you mentioned, I think you said 2 points, or maybe he went scoreless in the first half even. He had, I believe, 2 or 3 fouls in the first half, so he was in foul trouble. And really what you saw was defensively, trying, but maybe being a little overeager, a little over aggressive at times. Offensively, it felt like at first he was kind of rushing things. If he was going downhill, he wasn't slowing down and changing his pace at all. It was just, I am running at the rim, which led to a couple bad misses, right? Where he would kind of put his shoulder into someone, just kind of blindly throw it up there. And that is kind of indicative of some of the areas that he needs to work on, right? He needs to be a little bit more disciplined defensively, and he needs to be a little more in control and a little more poised once he gets inside the arc. But you even kind of saw the progress showing throughout the game, right? Like he, as you mentioned, he had a few plays where, okay, he slows it down, he throws in an advanced gather, he plays off 2, he pump fakes a couple times to get under control, get his man up in the air. I mean, he had a really nice play with about 4 or 5 minutes left in the game where, he has a bigger player on him. He attacks his front foot, and he kind of gets him backpedaling, and then he has a behind the back snatch into a smooth midi pull up. And you never like to see a guy ideally make their earnings just in the mid range, but it's really nice that he's developing that as a counter, right? Because it's great that I think he gets downhill better than people give him credit for, as you kind of see in his free throw rate. And it's great that he has kind of that 3-point potency, but to have that in-between game developing too is really encouraging, I think. He's just a really fun player as a point guard with some size at, I believe, 6'4.5" barefoot. Physical, tough. And when we talk about kind of what I was mentioning earlier, as far as like what I'm looking for in the scouting process, like his growth curve has been tremendous. Where like a year and a half ago, I don't think he was really looked at as an NBA prospect. Maybe even more recently than that. And my understanding is that the decision-making, the scoring ability have improved tremendously. He's become much more of a true point guard, where he was more of a combo or maybe even a wing to some people. So he's just developed so immensely. And he also has that elite skill set as a pull-up shooter who can create for others, who can get downhill, who can use a screen. I honestly think he can slot next to other guards as well, due to kind of that versatility, ability to attack a closeout, ability to punish a tilted defense. So he's a lot of fun. He's someone that I was high on coming into the year. I had him, top 5, top 7 at first. And, I think he, like you said, could be climbing. I don't really see him overtaking Dylan, and I don't see anyone overtaking Cooper. But I think starting that 3 slot, I would give him some really heavy consideration,
Yeah, I mean, you hit on it. He's hit so many of these markers that you want to see in a point guard, but also the scoring creator, which we have kind of defined as a little bit different than just a scoring point guard. It's more of someone who, it really comes down to their decision making, their feel, like a primary initiator who's going to run your offense, has the ability to score, but is looking for the best play for the team every time down, and can kind of read the defense and react. And either create an advantage for themselves, draw fouls, kick out to shooters, or just make the right play for the offense to help create a good look as consistently as possible. And no player is perfect, but that's kind of what defines it. So it can be anyone from big old Nikola Jokic down low to LeBron on the wing to even someone like Steph Curry who might be doing it more off the ball as well. But it doesn't necessarily have to be a heliocentric James Harden type that's running pick and rolls every time either. But I would say both of them kind of qualify where they're able to create those advantages for themselves or teammates every time down. And yeah, for Kasparas, it's totally fair, I think, to have him at least second or third. I'd probably have him third as well at this point. And there's a couple other interesting talents. I really like what Asa Newell brings in a different way, kind of his footwork, his active hands, his defensive versatility, his play finishing, some good three-point traits early on, kind of as a younger prospect that hopefully kind of develop out as he enters the draft. I'm really I can clearly see in my eyes anyway that I think he's going to be a pro with a role basically on any team that drafts him. There are just a ton of NBA level traits in my eyes for him. So I've had him 3, but for a while too. So it's still up in the air. But in terms of the final big board, but Kasparas can light it up. And shout out to Ricky O'Donnell, who I was talking to on the podcast a little bit about Kasparas somewhat recently. And, he kind of said some of the same things where Kasparas is a little on the frailer side, but he uses that size aggressively hunting contact. He's not afraid, like you said, to plow through people, to use that footwork to get through the paint, to attack the rim constantly, to create a little advantage with a bump and finish there, or fake doing all that and then hit the step back kill shot from 3. So, when you have that, like Ricky said as well, when you have that pull up 3, that's a shot that's going to translate to the NBA level, creating the space and hitting the tough shot on the ball. And it really comes down to can he defend at a high enough level, and can he create enough offense consistently to deserve having the ball in his hands at that level. And when you're able to score and shoot and pass with that size, things are looking good for your future offensive potential, especially at the NBA level. So, why don't we just dive right into this NBPA Top 100 draft? So we are looking for the best scoring creators from this summer camp out of roughly the top 100 high school prospects in the country at the time, at least the people that ended up at this camp. And there's a ton of fun names. Now, off the top, I'm going to give a shout out to 2 forwards, Chris Cenac Jr. and Davis Fogle, who were 2 of the most impactful players at this camp. And they showed defensive tenacity. Fogle really impressed with his hustle. Cenac won MVP, doing a little bit of everything. And for the sake of this draft, we're going to take them off the board before we even get started, because roughly everyone else we're looking at on the big board available players here are guards. And so just for that reason, it might be a little more comparable in this sense to kind of give them a shout out up front. They were incredible. I think they both would qualify for this type of exercise as well. But we're going to draft some guards here. So I'll let you go first. We got 10 picks here. We're doing a draft style. Take turns. You got the first pick. Out of everyone at the NBPA Top 100 Camp, who would you, build your team around? Who would you take first to be your offensive engine on your team?
Yeah, there's a lot of talent there. There's a lot of good guys that I think could be taken first, but I'm going to go with Brayden Burries, who's someone who I had some background with, and he just seemed to get better every time I saw him. And I mean, man, when you look at, another 6'4", 6'5" strong lead guard who gets downhill at will, is poised, has a great change of pace, can create a shot for himself at all three levels, but can also really creatively find his teammates. Man, he's really intriguing. When I first saw him at the Throne, his slashing really stood out, and that's absolutely still there. But the kind of jump shot creation was there a bit more too, and he was an absolute X factor out there.
Brayden Burries, I mean, he brought all around efficient shot creation. He rated highly as a 3-point shooter, passer, and scorer. He was tied for 19th as a 3-point shooter, 7th as a passer, 10th as a scorer in terms of Cerebro sports metrics. From here on out, any ranking that I share will probably be Cerebro sports metric of the event, where they have all these different stats for, especially for high school events and grassroots events, where they kind of put everything together on one scale so you can compare players from events based on the scoring, the playmaking, the at the rim effectiveness, the defensive tenacity, and then the overall impact. And pretty much all of these guys that we draft will essentially be top 20 at least playmakers, top 20 at least scorers, if not higher. Is a great pick to make. He's definitely one of, the most efficient bucket getters at this camp. And, I was a little higher on some other guys. I'm not surprised he went this way, because he, is a very high talent. And he, what it was is, I don't know if I caught enough of him at this camp compared to everyone else, because there was basically 4 games going on at all times. But he was a natural scoring creator, creating good looks for himself and teammates, explosive downhill force. He was hard to contain, nice body and ball control, getting to the rim, throwing in the hesitation dribbles, nice handles, showed like clear feel for the game, finishing at the rim, good 3-point shooter. And he was, like I said, top 20 rating in just about every metric that Cerebro tracks. So, a great pick off the top. I really thought you would go a different way. So now my whole board is in flux right off the top. I mean, man, where do I go from here? My heart says one way, but I feel like I got to take Meleek Thomas right now.
Yeah.
I thought he would be the number 1 pick.
Yeah.
So you got me good on that. So we got to shout out Meleek. He was, other than Cenac, I thought like probably the most impressive overall player at this camp. He led the camp in every stat you can think of. Basically, he was the highest in overall impact. He was 10th in defense, 17th at the rim. He was number 1 in playmaking, 8th in scoring, 31st in 3-point effectiveness. He was also top 4 in both of these scoring creator metrics and playmaking and top 4 in playmaking. But kind of when you combine both of the metrics, Meleek and Brayden Burries were in kind of their own upper right quadrant. So that's what I meant by top 4 in both. And I mean, he was just a walking bucket. My first impression was, it was like watching Jamal Crawford, where it was the most natural bucket getter you'll ever see. Like, there was no shot too tough for him to take. And I'm sure his sights are even higher. Like, he was quoted to, like many players, love Steph Curry and probably be inspired a little bit by his game. So I'm sure he's set on, being a number 1 scoring option eventually, wherever he ends up. But, it's something to be said that he was so effective in this atmosphere. It'll be interesting to see, against kind of tougher defenses as he progresses. He's off to Arkansas with Coach Cal. So he's kind of the honorary Kentucky guard as that trend continues with Cal over at Arkansas, with Darius I believe, will kind of be the 2 in the backcourt up there. So that'll be cool to see. And he'll be kind of the, whenever you pick a Kentucky prospect, they've had all these number 1 picks and top picks going back. That trend will probably follow with Coach Cal to Arkansas a little bit. But, what stands out with Meleek is his tough shot making, his 3-point effectiveness, his scoring versatility. Like, he has touch near the rim. He can hit the floater, deep range pull-ups, hit you with reverses, hangs in the air, has like nice athleticism, able to get up for that. crafty handles, like he's not losing the ball very easy. He's getting by you with a quick first step, with that, driving downhill with all sorts of kind of footwork and handles and finishing touch. And, I did at least catch one moment where he was talking with his teammate and the teammate felt like he missed him, and they were, talking it out like in a positive way. Like he would look for him next time around, or he would try to, look for him a little more. But like I said, he was number one in assists. So he was still putting up, good assist numbers, and kind of like Kiyan Anthony had the ball in his hand a lot. Like he probably took more shots and ran more plays than anyone on his team, and maybe anyone at the entire camp other than Kiyan. So that goes to show as well that's partially why their numbers were so high, probably, but also they were capable of doing it. And the whole point of this camp is to find high volume scoring creator. Whole point of this draft is to find high volume scoring creators, guys that can be relied on to run an offense, score the rock, create for their teammates. And Meleek is one of these guys that did it offensively and also showed up defensively with active hand deflections and jumping passing lanes with anticipation to force steals, and just showing good two-way feel for the game with incredible touch at every level.
Yeah, Meleek is a high-level player, and it was really up in the air between him and Brayden for me. I think it's really – I appreciate you pointing out the playmaking, because I think that some people have criticized Meleek in the past for being a little bit too score first, for hunting tough shots a little bit too much. And that's why I really appreciated seeing him, delving so much into his playmaking and also scoring at all three levels. He got to the rim well. He had a few above the rim finishes. He had some really nice touch. He's a high level player. And you mentioned kind of that moment of communication too. I saw him both at NBPA and at Pangos, and in both contexts, how he was just so incredibly vocal, and that really stood out. He seems like someone who can be a real leader with the way he communicates with his teammates, which is not something that should be disregarded, So to see someone so talented with the athleticism, the skill, the feel, and the leadership is a really nice combo.
No doubt. So we got two off the board here. He's Meleek could end up pretty high in his draft too, but I mean, the 2026 is like one of the best draft classes I've ever seen. Like this is one of those like where you get a lottery pick, you might end up with an all-star like late in the lottery, because there's just so much talent available. And obviously the top of the draft with Darren Peterson, Cam Boozer, AJ DeBonsa, super impressive. You got Elijah Arenas transferring into the class now, so he's there. Chris Cenac, who we mentioned before, he's one of the top prospects in this class. You got Koa Pete. There a lot of players on the U17 Team USA team that were kind of filling up from this class as well. So, and then later in the draft, I think there's like potential starters and, fringe stars later in the draft too, that we might even hit on a little bit later in the pod. So, with the third pick, Zach Welch takes.
Oh man. So if I remember correctly, I believe he got hurt. But man, did he play well when he was on the court. Kingston Flemings was tremendous out there. It was my first time seeing him live, and he, pound for pound, might have been one of the most like uber athletic people there. I remember pretty distinctly he had one play where he attacks a closeout, driving baseline, and a big man meets him in the air as he goes up for a dunk, and it was like he hit the button in a video game to do your second jump, and he just rose all the way. It was freaky. And I think that's just, while that kind of capped off a great performance, it was really par for the course with him, where he's a super athletic downhill playmaker who just has great feel creating for others, but also you really can't keep him out of the paint. And his jumper was falling there. I think it might be the area of his offense that is maybe needing the most work, but I think he's already putting the work in, and it was connecting really well there. Not to mention, the defense was really high level too. He was locking dudes up, picking them up pretty pretty early on to possessions and just forcing havoc. So when you look at someone who's, an NBA quality athlete, NBA quality playmaker, and the jumper seems to be coming along, he's a really fun long-term bet for me.
Yeah, no doubt. And he was, underrated. He was one of those guys that maybe I didn't see enough because when I looked at the stats after, I was like, he just dominated every category you could think of. Like he was first in scoring via Cerebro's pure scoring prowess metric. He was second in playmaking, their floor general skills metric, and had a capable 3-point outside shot. And like you said, like just a natural scoring creator type, like perfect for this draft. He consistently creates good looks for himself and others. Brought some two-way impact, I thought. Good feel on both ends. Capable outside 3-point shooter, and then had all the developable ball skills that you want to see with the handle, the scoring, the passing, and like I mentioned, rated like top 5 across the board for especially for this exercise here. So great pick. 6'4" point guard, 2025 class. He's headed to Houston to play with Chris Cenac. So talk about a fun pairing there where you got two like high field two-way players along with some other high talent headed there playing down in Houston together. And there were some possibilities that Cenac went elsewhere. So it's cool to kind of see him pair up with kind of like a natural guard to play with who, ideally should make each other better. So with the 4th pick in the NBPA 2024 scoring creator draft, I'm going with the lefty, Acaden Lewis. He is too much fun out there. I might have taken him higher if available, but I'm glad to get him right here because he was one of my favorite players from the camp. There was a cool little moment where I got to interview him, asked him who his inspirations were, and he mentioned a few names, but one of them was Brandon Jennings. And obviously, like you're a lefty point guard, pull up 3-point bucket getter who can create for yourself and others. Like Brandon is one of the first players that comes to mind. I shared that clip out and or shared the quote out and tagged Brandon, and he retweeted it as well. So it was kind of a cool little moment just to see them kind of, I guess, interact on Twitter with maybe the next lefty point guard to one of the next lefty point guards that kind of inspired by his game to enter the league and be on the come up for the NBA. And Caden was like kind of who I thought of first for this exercise. Like he's a guy that showed he can run an offense, showed he can get buckets, showed he can pull up from 3, showed he can make the best play for the team every time down, if he's open, he's going to get the bucket. If he can step back for midi, pull up jumper, he's going to get that shot off. And if his teammates are open, he's going to look to set them up too. Like it's a natural point guard who can score a little bit. And in terms of his stats, he rated highly in all these stats, 6th in 3-point effectiveness, 11th in playmaking, tied for 18th in scoring. He was on my like top 5 final players. Like I thought he was exciting and effective. Like he had flashy handles, a unique scoring style. You don't see too many lefties kind of play with his bounce, his control, having that much fun out there that he is, and just super versatile as a scorer. Showed some good defensive instincts, getting his hands on some balls and active hand deflections. And I think he had a mismatch in the post where he was the guard defender and being backed down by post up and forced a turnover, hitting the ball before he got the shot off and took off running. Quick burst body control, another thing that stood out for him, just able to penetrate the paint with ease, drawing in defenders for fouls and kickouts, drawing the and ones, converting them. And yeah, I mean, just great vision, playmaking chops, good feel for the game. 3-point, kind of like we said with Kasparas, like if you can get to the rim, you can pull up for 3, you can create good looks for yourself and teammates. Like, things are looking good. And, he is a 6'3" point guard in the class of 2025. And, he's projected pretty late in the draft, but I kind of think he will be a guy that ends up rising as the college season progresses, because he had some big offers for pretty much play at any school he wanted to, and he ended up deciding on Kentucky. So, maybe he will be the one to continue the Kentucky guard tradition himself without that trend following Cal. So, shout out to Acaden. Really enjoy his game. And so that's four picks down. You have any thoughts on Acaden before we jump to 5?
Yeah, Caden's a lot of fun. I think when you look at a guy who, like you said, has the scoring at multiple levels, has the playmaking, he plays his butt off on both ends of the ball, and I think the mental makeup is just phenomenal with him too. I really think, outside of being like an outlier athlete, he has just about everything you kind of want to see from a guard his size, make it long term, right? He's a really fun player. I understand that he kind of has had to overcome some dips in his high school career, and it's great to see him bounce back so strong, keep growing, and like you said, he was one of the top players in a loaded event.
No doubt. So we got 4 picks down. With the 5th pick, who you got?
Oh man, I'm between 2 guys, but I'm going to give a shout here to Jalen Petty. He's someone I got to see a lot this summer because I caught him a few times out on the Adidas circuit as well. And he is so fun to watch. When you talk about, I believe you said effective flair with Kasparas, like I think that is a great way to refer to how Jalen Petty plays. He is a very small guard, probably just hovering around 6 feet tall, but he also has some pretty insane vertical pop, and he uses it really creatively. He's a really deceptive, manipulative jump passer in the same way that like maybe a Tyrese Halliburton is. Obviously, not saying he is Halliburton, but that kind of micro skill there reminds me of the way Tyrese uses it too. And he also uses that kind of vertical pop, obviously well, at the rim, but he rises far above defenders in the mid range, like way higher of a release on that pull up jumper than you'd expect for someone his size. Really creative player. He had the good fortune of playing with, I believe, one of his high school teammates there. And their chemistry was awesome. And then they kind of spread to the rest of the team. So they were just playing off of each other really well. And then he also, I've seen the mid range be high level before, but the 3-point shot was pretty great there. He was pulling up from well beyond NBA range with a lot of comfort. And then defensively, I mean, he's a hound at the point of attack, and he's so athletic that, again, he has a little bit of rim protection chops for a small guard too. And like I kind of said when I was talking about my scouting philosophy, it is tough to make it as a pro at that size, but I think he has a lot of the things you're looking for to compensate for a lack of size. And regardless, I think he's going to be a really high-level college player who gives a lot of teams fits on both ends of the ball.
Yeah, I mean, great pick. That was my next guy too. He was a top 5 guy for me at this camp, and really that 6 foot size mark is probably the only thing working against him for as far as being an NBA pro, because he just brings incredible 2-way feel. Like he makes winning plays like it's his job, and he can do just about everything you want as a point guard. Like you mentioned, just natural point guard playmaker, brings elite point of attack defense, anticipating steals and deflection. You mentioned the shot blocking, versatile scorer off the dribble, like can just pull up and knock down, pull up threes and mid range jumpers, finishing at the rim through traffic. Spacing the floor for catch and shoot triples off the ball, and just insane athleticism, like you mentioned, especially for only being 6 foot. Like he gets up and he flies around the court, up and down, exploding to the rim. Got some chase down blocks, got some breakaway slams, and just really impressed by his feel, his decision making. And that's kind of what this exercise is about: is highlighting these guys that showed how to make good decisions consistently, especially with the ball in their hands, running an offense. And to hit on some of the stats, he was perfect from the free throw line. I think it was 12 for 12, maybe 13 for 13, 100%. Shot 56, 43, 100, which is 11th, 9th, and 1st at the event. He was first in assist to turnover, had an 11-0 assist to turnover ratio. Like, that's not a typo. Like 11.0 assist to turnovers. That's just insane. He was 18th in scoring at 15 points a game, third in assists at 6 a game, and 2 steals, was good for third. He was tied for second in playmaking, fourth in 3-point effectiveness, 18th in scoring, and he even finished ninth in overall impact and 23rd in defense as a guard. Like, you would normally, like an undersized guard, normally it's like big men who kind of tend to be seen a little higher by these impact metrics that, aren't perfect by any means. They're just tools to kind of help project who did what. And generally they can be influenced by rebounds and kind of just big men traits tend to be a little higher here. But the fact that, he was a top 10 impact guy and, top 25 on defense at this whole event, and given his size, I think just highlights, along with all the other stats, what he does well. Like, if you're building an offense and you want a point guard to run it, like, Jalen Petty's your guy. Like, is no doubt. And unless I'm mistaken, he is committed to New Mexico men's basketball, so we'll have to keep an eye on him for the class of 2025 and where he goes from here. Because I really would be excited to see him, get a chance, some team to kind of take a chance and see if they can make it work, because he's just an exciting player that plays the right way. Learning Basketball is a Swish Theory podcast hosted from Beyond the Arcade. Hey, that's me. You can find my work on Twitter, YouTube, Substack, and check out the team's writing at theswishtheory.com. So those, I'd say, were pretty much the top 5 names we both kind of you had it first, so you got the dibs on having it first in terms of ranking them. But those were kind of the top 5 like standouts for this exercise, I thought. And there's a lot of other names you could go from here. I'll probably list. We honestly probably could have done a top 20 and had enough names to really be able to talk about guys. But we'll give a shout out to anyone who's not drafted at the end that probably could have been. But at this point, man, there's some interesting names left on the board. I got it down to like 3 or 4 in this next tier, and I think I'm gonna go with Darren Rippey Jr. because he has been lighting it up ever since this camp. Like, he's been everywhere. Anytime you turn on Twitter in the grassroots space, it's like Rippey went off for 35 and 5 again, and it's like, man, he's just moving up the ranks real quick. He impresses. A reliable scoring creator at this camp. He showed two-way feel, pull-up 3-point shooting, had the playmaking vision, the half-court execution, reliable shot creation for himself and others, natural point guard that could get his own shot off. He could score off the dribble. He could set up teammates, showed nice downhill speed with the body control and the quick burst to the rack, was decelerating, nice footwork to create advantages and finish at the rim. Super clean finishes on the layups and the finger rolls and the floaters and the runners. Versatile scorer, shot profile all around the floor, especially at the rim, but could hit the midi pull-up, could space the floor on and off the ball. Knockdown 3-point shooter, pull-ups and catch and shoots. He had a couple sequences where he was just catching fire for back-to-back threes over and over again. That was cool to see. And was running pick and roll like, a maestro, as the 2K badge would say. Like, he was just super impressive running the offense, hitting passes, hitting the roll man, drawing 2 defenders and making the right decision with the ball. And just, again, great two-way feel. Another guy that, could time up strip steals, could be in help defense, could be in point of attack, and yet still bring pressure to force turnovers, was able to jump passing lanes, go coast to coast for some grab and go, like breakaway slams, impressive vertical hops. Like, he did a lot, and had one interesting stat. He ripped off 5 steals in one game at this camp. He was 5th in assists at 5 a game, 4th in assists to turnover at 3.6, and 8th in steals for total. And I'll pull up some of his cerebrometrics too. But what were your thoughts on Rippey?
Rippey is someone I've seen a lot of because, coming out of Blair Academy in New Jersey, he plays a lot on the national prep circuit. which most of their stops are up here in New England. So I first saw him, I think last November, or I guess 2023 November. And he has grown a lot as a player, which was the most encouraging part about this camp for me, because you mentioned, the sequences of the shooting. That's pretty new for him, and that's really exciting to see, and it's something that he continues to build on. But having the shot as a real, genuine weapon is a great development for him that'll unlock the rest of his game even more. He's always been a great slasher. He has a really strong lower body and is what I like to call an omnidirectional mover as a driver, who can just change directions so well. Really explosive as well. And I think the actual playmaking kind of has improved since I first saw him as well, where he's been a point guard the whole time, but just the level of reads, the quickness with which he made them, the manipulation as a passer took a real step up. And, you mentioned the defense too. He's a real ball hound. He has good instincts. So, yeah, Rippey is a really fun player to watch. And when I mentioned earlier how I love seeing a positive growth trajectory in prospects, he's on a really good growth curve right now.
Yeah, and I had some super impressive metrics from Cerebro as well, rated over 79 defensively, which puts him in like the top 20, top 30 area. He was fourth in playmaking, as you said, 36 from 3-point line, 39th in scoring. And he had a nice quote. I got to ask him during some of the games, how would he describe his approach, his mindset? And it's just to play the right way at all times. He said there's a lot of dudes that get a little out of control when they don't touch the rock, when dudes not spinning the ball. But I feel like I just want to play the right way every time, because that's going to stand out to college coaches. Got to meet his dad as well. Was super cool outside the camp, and shout out to them. He's got a good head on his shoulders, good kid, just trying to make it in basketball. And my apologies once again. The name pronunciations get me. I got Kasparas right, and then I called him Deron. It's Deron Rippey. Also, Ron is the nickname. So one of these days I'll get all the names right. But if you're a listener to the podcast, that's I'm good for one mispronunciation per pod. So we just hitting the trends here. So we got 6 off the board. Really like that Rippey pick for me. I thought it was a good value there. So you're up now with the 7th pick. Where you head?
Yeah, so Rippey was absolutely going to be my next pick, but
nice.
I'm going to go with Dante Allen here. He's someone who I think maybe a little less flashy than some of these guys, and maybe a little less explosive than them too, but really high feel, pretty versatile in his ability to toggle on and off the ball. Made a lot of good reads, made a lot of quick reads, which I appreciated. The shot was falling. He made offense look easy, right? And that is something that really matters, especially, in general, of course, but when you're playing in a camp full of top talent and really good defensive players too, making offense look easy and making it easier for your teammates is really important to me. He's someone who I think, could either kind of go the path of developing as like a lead guard, but I think he can also kind of be this nice complementary option, which is great as far as scalability goes. Smart, gritty defender, played hard. Again, might not be the same explosive, dynamic talent as a Kingston Flemings or Meleek Thomas, but a really intriguing player who I think will do great things in the next level and might have more of a shot as a pro than some people give him credit for.
Yeah, great pick, and I think that's a good point that he might be a little lower nationally consensus wise at this point, but he's a winning player. What's interesting is, in terms of this exercise, at first when we first brought him up, I didn't necessarily think of him as the creator side of it as much. I think of him more of as an off-ball guy. But then when you look at the numbers and you really look at what he brings to the table, and it comes down to his decision making. He makes high feel good decisions that help his team win all the time, and that's continued at Mount Verde where he's transferred to. I've caught him live a couple times now, and on film as well. And like he's initiating pick and rolls too. Like he's not just a standstill guy in the corner that's just a 3-and-D guard. Like he's a high feel connector type that he rated high in overall impact at the Cerebro Camp, 10th overall. He rated super high on defense, 5th overall, and then highly in playmaking and scoring as well. And I think that kind of highlights his all around game. My first thought, and maybe it's a little bit of his physical attributes too. So I try not to overdo the comps, but my first thought was Desmond Bane when I was watching him, like somebody that can kind of like fit in any context as a guard, and he can hit the off-ball 3-and-D stuff, but he can also run a little offense on the ball and bring that two-way versatility, that connector type feel to both sides of the game. He's Dante's a 6'4" shooting guard, class of 2025, has a clean catch and shoot 3-point shot, good drive and kick connector feel, like I mentioned, great off-ball movement, like timing up cuts, like just makes winning plays over and over. Like he is very much a team first, right play, right spot, right time kind of guy who does a little bit of everything. Nice finishing at the rim, quick burst to the rack, and super strong. I should add, like he can be a little hectic at times, using that strength as an advantage. Like he might try to like run you over instead of like use graceful footsteps to get around you, but he forces the refs to make a whistle call, and a lot of the times he's drawing that foul, and he can he's hunting contact. He can attack the paint and then either draw the foul, finish at the rim, or kick out. And one quote he also had was I asked him what kind of moves he spends time on during practice, and he says he just works a lot trying to get downhill and work on different finishes, not just straight layups that make it blocked. His shooting too, that's definitely something he wants to get better at and keep improving. And he says he's been watching a lot of Anthony Edwards and Jaylen Brown. When I asked him kind of if there's any players or moves, skill sets that he might try to learn from the pros, and he just likes the big impact that they're making on their team, especially deep in the playoffs. So Dante Allen's a winning player, no doubt that like he has the attributes necessary to be kind of, at the very least, hit all the role player things at the next level, but also with kind of that sum of its parts effect where he has all these ancillary skills that make him a good basketball player. Maybe it becomes a higher ceiling than a lot of people expect, because he has, in theory, such a high floor in so many different aspects of winning basketball. So, that's a great pick here. And yeah, did you have any other thoughts on Dante or any guys we've been talking about here?
No, ready to move on to the next one.
All right, we got, let's see, 3 picks left. Man, there's a couple different ways to go here. I think, man, it's tough to leave somebody off as well. Like there's a lot of exciting talent here, but I'm gonna go with Shon Abaev at this point. He's a super fun bucket getter. And, if I was going just by the impact metrics, I guess, that it might be a little bit of a reach in that sense. But like, to me, he was a one-man show, a one-man offense at this camp. Like he defined this type of, scoring creator exercise where he was able to create a tough shot, but a makeable shot for himself every time down the floor. He was running pick and rolls, but also like not just hunting his own shot the whole time. Like he was looking to read and react to what the defense was giving and create a good look for himself or others. Just an absolute sniper from deep, swishing contested pull-up triples, step-back jumpers, catch and shoot triples, hit a 4-point play, hit a tough shot like a Dirk fadeaway, one-legged mid-range jumper. Just a walking bucket who can stop and pop for the pull-up just about anywhere on the floor, and showed tight handle with the ball control to get to his spots, and then drop that decelerating footwork and body control to kind of create a little advantage as he drives through the paint. He's impressive finisher at the rim, switching hands, just smooth with a little running hook at one point and a whole bunch of different finger rolls. And I thought he showed good vision when he was, especially once he sucked defenders into the paint and penetrated the paint. He was able to kick out and find open shooters constantly, or look to hit the roll man and pick and roll. Soft touch type of shooter, and on top of that, vertical downhill athlete with grab and go pace, going coast to coast. He had good hustle, making some small winning plays, which you might not see in this context a lot, but like saving a ball from falling out of bounds and running full sprint speed under the basket to save it. And you can't say enough kind of about his scoring creator potential. And to me, there was a game where he was clearly the most impressive offensive option, just doing absolutely everything for his team. And I'll look up some of the stats on him while we're talking here. But what stood out to you about Abaev?
Yeah, no, I think you hit on a lot of it there. I think he's one of the more polished scorers there, in terms of like finding ways to create looks for himself, seeking his shot. The shooting touch is quite good with him. I think he's strong, polished, skilled. He has good size. As you mentioned, a lot of the guys we've been talking about are more traditional, like true guards, and I think where he's a little bit more wing sized, I think that is a big part of what makes that skill set intriguing for him. And I got to see him a little bit later in the summer as well at the Elite 24 event, and he if anything improved there, right? Like he just kept the same momentum going where he can score at all three levels. I do think he can toggle on and off the ball like Dante, which is really nice. I think that there's some playmaking there with him too that's really fun, and I think that at first glance he can seem like a little bit of a more below the rim athlete, but he has a little bit more of that above the rim juice than you might think as well. I think he's gonna be a really fun guy to track at the next level. And I don't know if he's necessarily a one and done guy or not, but he's going to have a real impact in college, and he has that kind of unique pro level scoring skill set that could carry him far.
Yeah, absolutely. And he's off to Cincinnati. It's a good note that he is a little taller than the rest of these guys too, a little bigger. He's listed as 6'8" small forward at the camp, class of 2025 as well. And he didn't stand out on the impact metrics. That's what I mentioned off the top, that the stats might favor a few of these other guys, but I just, like you mentioned, like the scoring versatility, shooting versatility, just the touch on and off the ball did show like promising scoring traits and playmaking traits. He's on the list of like the top 50 guys, but wasn't necessarily top 10 in either one stat. He was efficient at the free throw line, only missed 2 free throws and took about 16 of them, I believe. And to me, he was like not, I don't want to underrate it. Like he was top 10 guy to me at this camp. Like I thought he really stood out because of that bucket getting, his decision-making feel, like mature type of decision-making. Didn't seem like he was just hunting his own shot. Like like you mentioned, able to finish at the rim and shoot from beyond the arc and kind of everywhere in between while looking to create for his teammates. So, Shon Abaev goes number 8. We got one pick left. Who you got at number 9?
Oh, I'm really stuck between two guys here, both of whom I think are pretty underrated in this class as a whole. I'm gonna, since you went with Abaev, I'm gonna go with a little bit of a less traditional one myself and say Davion Hannah. Davion, I think he's listed at 6'5", probably right around that, with long arms. He's athletic, lean, but some functional strength. And at first I thought he was just kind of this like defensive stalwart, right? Which he absolutely is. He can really blow things up off the ball while also being pretty versatile on the ball. But he had like a lot of initiator usage. It was really fun. Got downhill well. Has a nice pull-up jumper, athletic finishing package, and pretty creative passer. I don't know if the ball skills are quite at the level to be a primary, especially going off to Alabama. But I do think that the foundation of the ball skills and decision making and passing are good enough to warrant some creation usage there. And the I mean, even off the ball, he attacked closeouts well. He drew closeouts because he was nailing his threes at a pretty good clip. He's just really versatile. And for me, if the scoring efficiency can translate and he can continue to develop as a creator, with his size, athleticism, and two-way prowess, he has a pretty interesting ceiling, you know?
Yeah, and good mention on his defense because he was an impressive defender, but he also stood out with the ball in his hands as a playmaker, and he rated highly defensively via Cerebro and highly as a playmaker via Cerebro, and 6'5" shooting guard is what he's listed as, and kind of impressed a couple different ball skills. I wouldn't say I caught as much of his game as all these other guys, but I saw him a few times and thought I was impressed by his scoring, his tight handle, the ball control, the clean dribble moves, powerful athleticism. He got up for some monster slams that made the whole gym light up, and he was a pull up sniper from deep, able to hit the three from deep and hit a clean pocket pass in pick and roll to the roller. So that's another guy that can bring a little defense, a little shooting, a little playmaking, and can definitely see how he fits this archetype, and especially if you're looking for two-way guys, because it's while the exercise is more about an offensive engine, the actually making it in the league, you got to be able to defend your own position unless you're one of the top 5 or 10 scorers in the league, or just kind of destined to be a bench player. If you want to start, you got to defend, and so that's a good place to start, whether it's a connector or a lead initiator, defensive playmakers who can shoot and score. You're doing something right. So shout out to Hannah. And that leaves one last pick, and yet I have 2 guys, really 3 guys I kind of want to talk about. So I don't know where I'm going to go from here. I wasn't prepared for this. I thought you might go somewhere else. Man, anything could happen now. Man, I feel so. I'm going to make a pick, but then I might have to at least give a shout to another guy after we wrap with this, because I think I'm going to go with Caden Magwood here because of his bucket getting. I'll just give the other shouts now. I could have gone Kiyan Anthony here. I thought he was a natural scoring creator. He's one of the guys I thought of for this exercise. And the other one I was thinking as well was Darius Adams, a good playmaker, good scorer, high overall impact. And these guys all kind of rated similarly via impact. They were literally within decimal points of each other in terms of overall impact at the event. But something about Magwood's bucket getting just really popped to me. I thought he, other than Meleek, Thomas was probably the most impressive scorer off the dribble to me. Especially as a guard, he was just a tough shot maker. He could score from anywhere on the floor. He rated 5th in scoring, tied for 17th in 3-point effectiveness, and tied for 25th in playmaking. He was another top 10 overall guy in my all NBPA teams. I suppose he was the second team alongside some other guys that we've been talking about, and just all the ball skills he flashed. He was flashing vision and quick bursts, soft touch at the rim, tough shots at every level, crafty ball handler, good start-stop body control to kind of create the advantage in the spaces for him to get a shot off in the first place. Just a walking bucket. He definitely, favors the scoring in the scoring creator equation here. But, I thought he showed enough as a playmaker where you can kind of envision building an offense around that scoring as long as he continues to make the right play. And it didn't, I wouldn't say he was necessarily hunting his own shot while sacrificing passing. He was a good pick and roll playmaker. He would hit a nice pocket pass to the roller, some dump off passes on drives and transition, and looking for teammates as well. And he was just kind of looking for his shot first, I would say. And he was swishing floaters and runners, really nice touch at the rim. I mentioned the crafty handles on the drives, getting to any spot he wanted. He could hit pull up shots on the ball, on deep pull-up threes, off the ball, catch and shoot, clean jump shot mechanics is what it looked like to me. and just a self-creator that could create the advantage for himself very easily. And you can see how if he can create that advantage so easily and hit the tough shot himself, and at least is aware that of the feel required to make the right pass as well, that you can kind of build out from there, in my opinion, as a scoring creator type. And I was able to talk to him at the camp as well. If any players inspired his game, he mentioned Kyrie Irving and Damian Lillard. Try to take some finishing from Kyrie and some shooting from Dame and how they carry themselves on and off the court. That, of course, would be quite the player, being able to combine these two finishers and shooters in the pros. But it's a good goal to have, and kind of some all time great attributes that you want to kind of build yourself. So it's a good shout for him. In terms of what he wants to work on during practice, what kind of moves he spends most time off is just working on going off 2 feet when he gets to the paint, like turnaround fades, turnaround finishes, turnaround, kicking it out to the pass to the open shooter. And he said he's bringing that dog mentality. He feels like he's a dog, just showing everybody else that he's him, as the internet culture has taken over the way we speak. And he's got it out there. And in the last game, especially, I didn't even mention he just popped off. He exploded for 37 points in his final game. He started 10 for 10 from the field, and he flashed everything you can imagine. If you want to see some of these highlights, they're all on my Twitter, and I wrote about a full expansive scouting report as well on swishtheory.com or theswishtheory.com, that you can see these videos. You can see some more of my notes on there, and I'll be sure to link some of Zach's work on this same event, so you can kind of see all his thoughts, a little bit more of a deeper dive into these guys as well. So did you have any thoughts on Magwood and any other guys you wanted to give a shout to?
Yeah, Magwood is a really gifted scorer. When you talk about having a bag, he certainly has one. He's a gifted shot maker, great touch, good handle. I think he's a better athlete than people might expect him to be as well. And when you talk about the dog mentality, like he shows that on the court, right? Like he plays hard, and he kind of lets his emotions kind of course through the way he plays. And he's someone I got to see a lot of this summer as well, with Team Loader VA, and he's a lot of fun. He's a lot of fun to watch, and excited to kind of see what he can do at the next level as well. Beyond that, I like the shouts you gave. I would also say 2 more who are actually high school and AAU teammates. One that I was very close to taking was Derek Dixon. Dixon didn't get a ton of on-ball usage, but really made the most of it when he did. Pretty polished pick-and-roll playmaker. When you talk about the importance of like pull-up shooting and just versatile shooting shot profile in general, like that is him. He can come off movement and drain it. He's really good off step backs and side steps, kind of like Kasparas is. And then I would also shout out his teammate, Nick Lewis, who, when you talk about a dog, I don't think there are a few guys who encapsulate that more than Nick Lewis. But he's also someone who I think has improved in his poise and his pick and roll playmaking and the way he sees the floor. His jump shot has steadily improved over time too. He gets downhill, defends well, and like for someone who's probably about, I don't know what he's listed at, but he's probably between 6'1" and 6'2". He rebounds way better than he should. He was beating far taller dudes to loose balls and long boards with a shocking consistency. But I've seen him enough to know that that's not all that surprising for him, honestly. So those 2 are 2 other guys I would give a shout to who, Dixon going to UNC, I think he'll slot in well with their kind of versatile backcourt. And Nick Lewis going to Xavier, I think will do pretty well there as well. So there was a lot of talent there. I'm sure there are more guys we could shout out as well. But yeah, 2 more guys I wanted to, give some love to.
Yeah, great shouts. Derek Dixon rated really highly. He's a guy I probably just didn't catch enough of at this tournament, but he was 5th in playmaking via Cerebro and he was ranked right around Davion Hannah and Darren Rippey, and Nick Lewis was not far behind them either in terms of the combination of scoring and creating via those impact ratings. And yeah, Dixon was rated highly defensively, highly as a playmaker, highly as a 3-point shooter, shot perfect 13 of 13 at the free throw line. And yeah, he's a good shout. And then Nick Lewis was a lot of fun for sure. He brought that energy. I want to say he was paired up with Zamichael Wilkins, and they made it all the way to the championship game. Was Jalen Petty on that team too? Do you remember?
He might have been.
No, I'm forgetting because I think that was the team coached by T. Ross, and I got to talk to T. Ross a little bit right after the camp, which was just a cool moment. Walking to the car and just walking right by Terrence Ross, like, you know, always a fun time to see him. Magic legend. Shout out to T. Ross, but he raved about all these guys, especially Petty, for that, you know, energy that he brings and that kind of two-way feel. But I mean, you're right that Nick Lewis is another guy that is a dog out there. Like he brought real energy, real like playmaking type of point guard attributes that you want to see. Rated highly playmaking, and what was it? He was 14th in scoring, 9th in rebounds, 4th in assists. He was rated highly at the rim, which is normally a big man trait. He rated highly playmaking, like I mentioned, and 14 of 16 from the free throw line. He was like a top 20 overall guy for me as well. Like good body control, decelerating to the rim, and like that quick burst and then a quick stop into the deceleration. I thought really stood out for him, and just a strong downhill force that could kind of get to the rim at will. And yeah, you know, shout out to him. Shout out to Magwood. I'm not sure if I ever got to his stats or not, but he's a walking bucket, and they're somewhere here. But you know, he was a walking bucket, like we said. He was super impressive as a scorer. He was like, let's see, 5th in scoring at the camp, and just a top 20 playmaker as well, who could hit the 3 ball pretty much as well as anyone there. So you can definitely see the outlines of a scoring creator there. And then, you know, I almost can't believe we didn't take him. Shout out Kiyan Anthony. You know, he was obviously, before anyone even got there, he dropped a 42-point game in like the first day at this camp. He was a high volume pick and roll guy. I literally called him an elite scoring creator as one of my first takeaways from watching him. Like, what really impressed me with Kiyan is his ability to bump and finish. Like he was able to run pick and rolls consistently, look for his own shot, hunt contact, draw the contact, and still finish like seemingly an impossible shot at every level, like at the rim, in the mid-range pull-up. He was hitting 3-point pull-ups. He literally led all players at the camp in points and free throws made. And, you know, part of that is getting a lot of calls, getting a lot of touches, probably running more pick and rolls and more plays with the ball in his hands than just about anyone at this camp, and probably just as much as Malik Thomas did in terms of just raw usage and touches. But like he did well with it, and you know, shout out to him as an exciting prospect going forward. Just a natural scorer, sweet, smooth shooting touch, and a good creator as well. I thought so. You know, there's definitely offense to be had there. And wanted to give one other main shout out to Darius Adams. I almost ended up taking him this high. He was also in that same like impact bunch as Magwood and Acaden. He rated high playmaking, scoring, free throw line, natural point guard, had that grab and go, pace pushing, good vision, hit the 3-point assist running in transition, like nice look up vision to kind of get the ball ahead of him, and a splashy outside shooter who could pull up and catch and shoot threes. Good finisher at the rim, scorer in transition, sound 2-man game, hitting the roller and crafty handles, just kind of like, you know, a natural guard with the ball in his hands. So Darius Adams is off to UConn, and Kiyan Anthony committed to Syracuse, like his dad. Shout out Carmelo, you know, one of the GOATs, one of my favorite players to ever play. Got to give them a shout. And I think I mentioned Shon Abaev is headed to Cincinnati. Dante Allen's heading to Villanova. Caden Magwood's heading to Auburn. So, they're all going to be playing some college ball here soon, and hopefully they hear their names called in the NBA draft. And um, not to break down every player on this big boards game, but Jordan Smith Jr., another guy that showed some great scoring creator traits. Uh, I think Cameron Ward, Caleb Holt, Eric Chatfield, Jalen Reece, Courtland Muldrew are some other names that we didn't touch on because we're only drafting 10 here, and there's about 20 names there that we just listed off that all had a good case as guys that can kind of fit this archetype as good, high decision making, high feel, good decision makers who can score, create, initiate some offense, and mostly just be trusted with the ball in their hands to make the best play for the team and create a good look as consistently as possible. And they're all super talented. They're only at this camp because they're super talented. So shout out to them. And, we did it. We drafted our top 10 guys. That was a lot of fun doing it, draft style here. That was a little different. I don't think we've done any drafts on the pod yet. So it's cool to do that with, the camp we were both able to catch in person. And yeah, man, I appreciate you hopping on the pod. It was a lot of fun talking hoops, and thanks for taking the time. Always a good time.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Appreciate you having me. Glad I could be the first draft, and I'm sure there will be many more to come. It was great getting to chop it up on these guys. Again, really talented group, and you mentioned a lot of other names there that were very deserving recognition too. So really high level event, but appreciate you having me on. It was fun running through all this, and yeah, this was a great time.
No doubt. And I just noticed too in my notes, Tyler Jackson, another point guard that was making moves there at the camp. So, I'm not going to name all 100 players, but there were a lot of talented guys that you could put the ball in their hands and trust that a good decision was coming, and, able to make good things happen for their team, especially offensively, and create good looks for themselves and others. That's the whole point. I actually tried to define what a scoring creator is in this super long article if you're interested to read about decision making feel in sports, trying to compare the run first quarterbacks that could beat you with the run or the pass to the big scoring creators that used to just be point guard and scorers, and now they're kind of combining talents into primary options, primary initiators that have to make decisions every single play and make the right decision for it to work. And a lot of that is reading or reacting to what the defense gives and having the talent and decision making feel to be able to pull it off and either run for the first down, hit the dump off pass in football, or attack the rim, score a bucket, or kick out to an open shooter who might shoot or attack the closeout from there. So there's a lot of it that goes into it. Shout out Evan Zaucha as well for his article on decision making feel. That was a big basis of kind of this concept as well. So a lot of fun being able to talk hoops. Thanks for taking the time, man.
Absolutely.
Have a good one.
You too.